Hi, my name is Dr. Scott Young, and today we're going to talk about Post-NESARA, GESARA. We're going to talk about a really interesting topic called the sheep. Coming right up. You're going to go, sheep. Okay, now I want to share with you, I want to step back for half a second, okay? There's a video series that I have, but you can watch it online right now. You can get it in digital form. We will do that later on the website. It's called Hope in the Last Days. So, and one of the things I'm going to be working on is we've talked about NESARA and the cabal and the historical sense of this, okay? I believe that there's an interim period of time that comes in. So many people are so confused about end time theories that they've heard people like Melissa Redpill that say we're in the tribulation, and when NESARA hits, we're going to be in the millennial reign. That deletes 650 scriptures that have to be fulfilled. And I mean, I could list them out and you would just be like, wait, I don't know what to say about that. I had this one lady that got really mad at me. She goes, a lot of theologians disagree with you. I don't care if every theologian disagrees with me. I'm not taking what I say, I'm taking what the Word says. The Word says there's 650 scriptures. And now one jot or tittle will delete from the law until it's all fulfilled. That's Matthew 5, I believe it is. And the point is that you're missing that concept. Now, one thing I want to put a couple things out of the way. We are working on the website, drscottyoung.com. It got the books on there. It has a lot of other information. You do have some articles on there. I've been losing weight. I was 233. You can see some of the videos probably last year. I'm 206. I'm working on my goal at 195, so it's kind of fun. We're working that kind of thing. It's a long process. I am working on my coughing. I know you guys want to talk about it all the time. You give me your little home remedies. No, no, no. We're working on that. We're working on the healing we're kind of working through that healing point. Now, if you want to study a little bit more about the biblical nature of the who's, you can look at my book called Rapture, Could There Be More Than One? We're going to talk about not necessarily rapture end time issues, because again, we're going to talk about, I am going to spend a lot of time post-NESARA getting into that interim time frame before we have the end time, the 7-year tribulation period to the millennial reign. Okay, I think it's a couple years-ish. I don't know what that number is, okay? I'm not going to worry about it because God didn't talk to me about the when and the hows. He didn't talk to me. He didn't talk to anyone. Sorry, that was a bad statement. He never said anything about the whens and the hows in Scripture. He talks about the whys and the whos. And we talked about that last week. So go back and look at the last week's stuff. Now, let's talk about sheep. Now, how does sheep have any meaning to you? Now, if you are on my Telegram channel, you can go NESARA, Dr. Scott Young, so you go and you can find NESARA, Dr. Scott Young, you'll find me there, okay? And you'll see a picture of me in a black shirt or, kind of thing, and I don't remember exactly, but something like that. And about, at this time frame, it's the 15th of September, so I have like 8,700 or something like that people on there. So it'll kind of give you an idea. But we talk a lot about this basic concept. Now, what I want you to understand about sheep is that most of you have never experienced sheep. There's a teacher, he's a professor at Oral Roberts, and he and I when we were talking about one of my books, we were trying to deal with this topic of the sheep and the goats. Scripture has a lot of talking about children, the babies. It talks about bride, the groom. It talks about the sheep, the goats, the elect. the chosen, it goes through so many interesting things. What I want to focus on is sheep. Now, this professor actually asked the question on his theology classes. He goes, how many people have ever been on a farm? And I was like, well, you could say a ranch. He goes, yeah, I'm a farm ranch. I say the same thing. And less of the Z generation that walk into college have ever been in a farm, so they don't know anything about it. And so why would I have a clue about this? Because when I was in 4-H from 4th to 6th grade, I raised pigs. I had 2 pigs every year. I had a 205 up to a 350 pounder. Now, again, I was a little skinny little kid, but I learned to pick up that pig from the back legs, and I would move him into the area that we're trying to get him to. So, I mean, it was very unique. I mean, I learned a ton about them. I mean, I would spend all day long with the pigs. I mean, this is before you had, this is in the 70s. This is before you had, TV you really could watch. You have 3 or 4 channels or whatever the heck it is. And so I didn't watch TV. So I was outside. But I learned about the sheep and the goats because when you went to the 4-H fairs, which I spent all these time, I mean, it was like a week-long thing. And you have no place else to go. I mean, there was a couple little stupid, ride things, but it was Douglas County, Colorado. So south of Denver. And there's nothing really to do. So we sat all of our time in the pens. So we cleaned the pens and we, talked to the pigs and talked to the other people. I would watch what was happening. And I didn't understand sheep, okay? A couple things you need to know about sheep. And we won't talk about goats because it's another fascinating topic too. Sheep are the dumbest animal you'll ever meet. There's really interesting stuff with them. They're stupid. What's even more interesting is that you cannot get a pig to move any place. I mean, so I learned to put a bucket over the head and then back the pig up, but then it was chaotic if you had to get them into a space, but you couldn't do it if it was a long distance. So I learned to wheelbarrow my pig when I would take them down to go wash them. Okay, and pigs love to be cleaned. Most people have no idea. They think pigs are dirty. That's not the case. They love to be cleaned, but they have the thickest skin in the world. If you pinch your skin and pinch whatever inches you have on your skin, you pinch a pig and you will pinch like 3 or 4 inches. Very, very tough, thick hide, okay? And so it takes a lot of effort. Now, the first time I ever saw this little girl, she opens her cage to the sheep, and it's right across from me. And I remember watching the very first time I saw this. And she walks down the area, and I'm going, where are you going? I mean, my pigs are doing that. They're like running the fence lines. And I'll give you a story about that one. They'd be running everywhere. I mean, she walks down the area, and this narrow kind of walkway. And she goes, and she says something. I mean, says their name or says something in a high-pitched voice. And they go, and they start like moving toward her. I'm like, how did you do that? It was like way beyond my understanding at the time. And there's no internet at the time, so we have no idea. And she goes, well, they listened to my voice. Mark 10 talks all about this. The sheep know my voice. I open the gate, they come in, they hear my voice, they feed at the pasture. Now, a lot of people in the church want to talk about sheep. And I'm like, why are you talking about sheep? I have this one pastor, this one church I was going to, and this one guy, Tony, was a real strong member of the church. And the old pastor had some sexual sin and didn't really want to admit it. And they had to finally put him out of the church. So Tony's statement about the next pastor they brought in, a guy named Scott, and pretty good guy, but really he had some scriptural things that he was pretty darn off with. Okay, I didn't find out about that later. And he actually left the church too with other situations, more with differences of opinions. But Tony would say, I want this next pastor, he was talking about the guy Scott up here, he's like, I want him to smell like the sheep. like being intermingling and being around them. And I was like, yeah, that's an interesting point. You know, I got his point. I mean, because he was thinking of us as the sheep. Now, when we talk about pastors, we think of them as shepherds. Now, if I said to you, especially in the 70s and 80s, and I called you a dog, we used to use the term called dog-faced liar, right? You'd look at that and you get mad, right? So you have terminology that has a meaning to you related to that. And when I say, like, you know, one of the three-letter agencies are pigs, you know, we talk about the grossness of that. That's what we're referring to, okay? But when we talk about sheep, we think that's a good thing in the church. The reality is that sheep are stupid. So the first thing you have to know about sheep is they're incredibly dumb. You can actually get, one of the interesting things, they call it a Judas goat. You can get a goat who will lead the sheep into the slaughterhouse. You can only do this once because of the way the goat is, and you have to keep coming up with the Judas goat. Judas Iscariot, okay, the guy who, you know, betrayed Jesus. So they use the sexual terminology. It's a thing. And so when you watch, you can watch little TikTok things on sheep. If you just search for that kind of stuff, you'll see they just move in patterns with one another. And so when we think post-NESARA, post-EBS, the world, we're struggling with the people who are not awakened. Realize in 2016, 80% of the Americans voted for Trump because they looked at the idiot Biden, who's an actor, and you're like, he's a dumbass. Sorry to be rude there, okay? He's an idiot, a moron. He's got stage 2 dementia. Of course, this is an act, okay? You understand that. Now, that was in 2020, excuse me, not 2016, 2020 of that. They got it. And Trump won over Hillary, the popular Hillary, because they unplugged the machines from the internet so they couldn't steal the election. And he won by like 302. It was a relatively strong win, but not like overwhelming. When you guys see, and at this moment I haven't seen it yet because EBS hasn't occurred, but when you guys see the real, you know, electoral vote, it's a crazy number. What we think is like New York State is the only one that Trump didn't win. Joe Biden doesn't even win his own state. I mean, Hubert Humphrey is the last one that didn't even win his own state. Come on, guys. You know, it's so stupid. When you listen to mainstream media, they talk about they talk about this concept of the unpopularity. They've been telling you for the last 6 months, like MSNBC, ABC, and they tell you these little polls that Biden has a 35% approval rating. That is the most manipulated number. The real approval rating is probably in the single digits, and we've sort of mentioned that before. They think of you as sheep. They think of you as dumb. They think of you as needing a leader. They follow a voice. This is really important, okay? You are not a sheep. You are not dumb, and you don't need a voice. But here's who needs the voice. A lot of the Z generation, what you don't know, you see the TikTok realm of the Z generation. Listen, I've interacted with them. They want truth. That's why they're rejecting almost all kinds of different things. But when I interact with them, I was at CU Boulder. I'm teaching a thing on, the death and resurrection of Jesus, the proof that I can do on that. And they were eating it up. I mean, they were just lapping it up. Now, I can say that in front of other kinds of groups and they won't get it the same way, but they saw truth because I was using veritas, verifiable levels of truth to explain this stuff. When I talk to groups, all they care about, when you really get into it, is they care about truth issues. Now, they're, excuse me, they're young. And so when you see this kind of stuff, they're looking for a voice. And they think it's to be woke. And so they're wearing a mask. And they're wearing, their stupid stuff, and they're going with the transgender thing and cutting off their breasts and doing all this other stuff. And, all this crazy things because they're looking for a voice. And they're incredibly confused because they haven't really woken up. And when you talk about this in scriptural standpoints, what Jesus is talking about, when he talks about the sheep, he's not talking about you. By the way, Mark 10 is talking about a time in the future in the millennial reign. He's talking about the people of the Jews and some other people that lived all the way through the tribulation. And we talk about this in the book, Rapture, Could There Be More Than One? The people that will live all the way through the tribulation, very, very similar to what we're experiencing today. I'm hearing from God right this moment, so I'm getting a little bit discombobulated. Okay. If you've waited all the way through this crazy period of from 2020 to 2021 through 2022, and you haven't awakened, it's going to take the biggest voice in the history of the world, the EBS, to awaken the sheep. Do you catch that? I mean, if you have woken up before that time frame, you've been listening to the subtle things, the subtle issues. Some of you will say, when I learned about the Queen, that woke me up. I'm not talking about when she just died here, okay? Because she died back in 2019. Don't believe anything but. Some of you studied it when you did 9/11. For me, it was 1993 when I was studying JFK. Now, and I steadily woke up a little bit after 9/11 because I was like, that's when I was like fully awake on everything. And I was going, I don't believe this stuff at all. So that's 2001 when I really was heavily awake. And it's because I'm searching for truth and I'm finding lies. Okay? So the sheep are dumb because they believe the lies. They don't look for real truth that is verifiable. But they say things like, it's called my truth, which is equal to opinion. And opinion has its basis in lie. Do you understand opinion in Scripture if you're talking about the continuum from real truth, real truth to the continuum of lie? Opinion is sitting right over here. Now, it doesn't sit all the way on lie when you kind of look at the Greek word of opinion. But it's based upon a little bit of they have a little bit of evidence to go why they call it their truth, okay? But so it's not a pure lie. No, Satan never pulls pure lies out. Even in the garden, he's talking to Eve and he goes, didn't God say? right? He starts with a bit of truth, but she didn't verify that truth. See, if she had gone to God, because, this little snake thing said da-da-da-da. Oh, obviously, we'd still be in the garden and, different story with this. But she never verified the truth. That was the powerful point. She walked in with her truth. So the snake kind of brings up some kind of cool stuff. And she's like, well, that makes sense. And then she brings it as her own truth. She brings that opinion over to Adam. Adam then acts upon it as well because it makes sense in his idea. Sheep love to do that. Again, they're dumb, they need a leader, they're looking for a voice that will help them. When they hear the biggest voice in the history of the world, of the EBS, they're going to come to this one conclusion, that I need to have verifiable truth. And these sheep are going to go, you're seeing them in their current state of stupid. By the way, we all have been there. If we're talking about, the awakened stuff, if you're talking about being a believer, you have to understand that you have to humble yourself and realize that you ain't got all the answers and you got to find the real truth, verifiable truth, and that's when you come to the cross of Christ. Duh! We all move from the child of God, or we move from the sheep nature, which is stupid, to the child of God, a reborn person. But the child of God needs we're not talking about stupid in that same way, but is ignorant. Boy, there's a big, big old nasty difference between ignorant and stupid. Stupid is a choice versus ignorant just doesn't know yet. If a woman or a man hasn't had sex with the other opposite sex, I don't want to talk about, gay stuff. Knowing is actually a word of sex in the Hebrew. And the person who hasn't had sex yet, and they wait till marriage, let's say, they walk into marriage with an ignorance that is actually beautiful. That can have the possibility of an amazing sexual relationship with their spouse. Now, stupid is what I did before I married Wendy. I'd had, 3 other relationships or something like that. Other relationships, but two other sexual relationships before I married Wendy. It was stupid. The first time I did it, I didn't know anything about it. I was ignorant, but I kind of heard God, and that happened. I was 21. And the reality is that when we have that ignorance, the second time that I do it, it's stupid because I know better. I'm making a choice. Does that make sense? When you move from the sheep phase, you're dumb. Dumb is not the same thing as being stupid. We're talking about dumb is just ignorant in essence. They believe the lies. They need a leader. These are really ignorant more than anything else. Now, when you're a baby, you're also ignorant because you think of yourself as the child of God. I'm thinking of a song I was hearing on the way to work. And there's so many worship. I'm sorry, but we need to rewrite worship and praise. Because you're not the child of God. Do you really want to identify as the child of God? What does Paul say? Paul says, and I'm going to use the Scott version, okay? Paul says, I wish you get off the milk and eat the meat. That means grow up. When I was a child, I did childish things. When I became a man, I put away the childish things. What is he saying? Grow up. What happens when someone grows up? They move from ignorance to real choice. And when they make bad choices, it's stupid. When they make good choices, they're going along in the Spirit of God and they're growing up. So when I hear child of God, I don't identify with this. By the way, I was in my healing event a couple days ago with Dee and Darren, okay? And I'm looking into Dee's eyes because she's looking at the spirit kind of things, okay? Some of the attachments that I've had, some curses upon me. And I got a lot of people cursing me left and right. And in the cursing that she was seeing some curses put on me, which is part of the cough that's been happening. Because it has no medical background. And it's because it's all esophageal, okay? Now, what happened in there, she was talking about, she was like, you're the child of God. And I like react to it. She was like, what was that? And I didn't get into this with her because I don't identify as a child. I don't identify as the ignorant because Jesus calls you the bride of Christ. When you start identifying as a child, you do childish things. When you identify as a sheep, you identify with this. Is that what you want to do? Some of you are way more mature in your awakened state. Now, I know people who, I'm thinking about this woman named Allie. She is very awakened. She is not a believer in God. She actually hates God. But she's very awakened. But she's not very sensitive to this stuff, to the stuff of God. Because she has really bad belief systems, okay? And obviously someone's hurt her and whatever, and she's taken that hurt on, which is her choice, okay? So in essence, there's a part of her that is like an adult when it calls the awakened stuff. But from a God standpoint, she's a sheep. Does that make sense? Because she just follows along. And I see people all the time. I just had an email 5 seconds ago. I get up at like 5:30 in the morning. It's 8:20 right now. I just got this email from one of my followers on Telegram. And she's asking me this question. She's like, should I follow all these people? And it's really confusing me. Okay, I appreciate you saying that. Because she's going, I'm real confused, but I'm searching for information. And she goes, should I take my 401k and pay off my mortgage? No. NESARA is going to pay off your mortgage. All institutional debt. Okay? It's going to do all of that stuff. So why would you take your 401k? I said, move your money to a money market. And by the way, this happens all the time. So I'm going to just give you the last little piece. When market corrections come, and they've come over and over and over again, 1987, 1929, but we don't really can look at that one. But 1987 and on, people knew to move their money to a money market. It's just a cash basis, right? And because they knew a correction was coming. So they can do it months before. That's wisdom. I mean, forget about the awakened stuff and all the stuff the Cabal's doing. Even institutional stock market guys know there's a time to move to cash and wait for the crap to come. Right around 9/11, people were moving their money like crazy. There was a sell-off after 9/11 to beat the band because people were sensing it was going to be a rocky market. It was very rocky afterward. By the way, it was rocky in 2000, okay? My stocks were dying left and right. But what happened in 9/11, I mean, the stock market just dives because of the crazy thing. I mean, Wall Street was attacked in essence, okay? Now, obviously, it's another conversation, an awakened conversation, but just from that standpoint, they just went to that. That's wisdom, okay? That's choice that you make. So as you're making choices, stop identifying with the sheep and realize that the EBS is there to fix the sheep. And they're going to they're going to act like they'll have the mask on. Go to my Telegram channel. I have this guy. Swear to you, it's so funny. He's doing this little thing, and there's a dude with an iPhone or whatever, and he goes, can I ask you these two woke people their questions? So they're all sitting with their idiot mask on the outside, right? And she goes, well, I'm not very comfortable with him videoing, him with the camera. And he goes, oh, don't worry about him. He identifies as a camera. And she goes, I'm confused. And that was all the TikTok thing. I love it. I was like going, oh my God, you're so brilliant. I could never have been that smart at that moment, okay? He's like going, he's identifying as a camera. And if people identify as a cat, or whatever, how does the woke person say to the guy that identifies as a camera? Can she, in her woke state, tell the camera guy not to be a camera? No. Kicked her butt by her own wokeness because, again, she is completely ignorant. She believes the lies. She needs a leader. She has the voice. She doesn't know how to deal with verifiable truth. She doesn't know how to apply logic in there. She's inside of her truth. And when someone else batters her thing, batters her hull, think about, the hull of your logic, like a ship, batters her hull with logic and shows his opinion as he identifies as a camera, she's screwed. She's so screwed. These people are going to be really easy, and they're going to just rip the mask off, and they're going to be totally different. And you're going to be looking at them like, what is wrong with you? You were beating me up last week. Right before the EBS, you were telling me I'm stupid. Now you're over here. Yeah, that's right. You're like, don't worry about it. The sheep, okay? They'll get out of their woke phase and they'll go to the awakened phase. So again, you want to study a lot about this because the Bible talks all about this. I have this series on rapture. Could there be more than one that will explain a lot about the sheep? But this is a portion that I want you guys to look at. Stop identifying as sheep in your churches. Stop identifying as a baby. Stop identifying as the child of God. You are the bride of Christ. That's what Jesus says about you. You are the bride of Christ. You reside in the heart of God. Do you know that my number one priority is Jesus? My number two priority is my wife before my child. I'll have only one son. My number one earthly priority is my wife. Do you catch that point there? If you are the bride of God, you actually have a higher priority list than the child of God. Guys, if you're not catching this, you're going to miss it. Sit back and think about that. When you elevate yourself in your understanding, your maturity phase, and you elevate yourself from being the sheep, which is just the ones that hear the voice, to a child of God, a step up, to the bride of Christ, you move yourself up in the priority list of God. And once you understand that, it'll be so powerful. It's beyond measure. So I hope this kind of stuff helps for you too. Thank you for listening.